Welcome to Transforming Transformational, the TeachBeyond podcast. I'm Kian.
And I'm Heather. We're here to explore what it means to be transformed in our own lives and how that overflows to living lives of transformational impact in our communities.
Heather, I'm glad to see you. It's great that we can still record this episode because I know we had to cancel our recording for this episode last time.
Yes, I remember that. I randomly lost my voice a day or two before we were going to record. And I'm actually glad we're able to record today because my house has been without power for the past few days.
Oh, wow. I knew you guys had a big storm up there, but I didn't realize you lost power.
Yeah, well, and what made this storm particularly unique is that it had what they are calling straight line winds. I had never heard of this before, but apparently it's like it's fast winds that just aren't spinning like a tornado. So they recorded them 90 to 95 miles an hour. I looked this up. It's about 145 kilometers an hour. So those of you who know kilometers per hour. So understandably, that knocked over a bunch of trees and power lines in my neighborhood. But good news is we're back.
Interesting. I like that even in the midst of the natural things that are happening, we get to learn something. So straight line winds are what we're worried about. That's good.
Yes, exactly. Well, today we are joined by Natalie Kardol, who is the short-term coordinator for TeachBeyond US and Canada. And Natalie is based in Lenoir, North Carolina in the US. But as we'll hear in her story today, she's originally from Germany and has lived and traveled all over the world.
Let's go over to that conversation with Natalie now.
Welcome to the podcast, Natalie.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Natalie, it is so great to have you on this podcast. And as we get started and just begin the conversation, I know that you've lived and traveled to a lot of places in the world. What is somewhere that you've never been to, but that you'd love to travel to, and why?
Big question to get started. Wow.
Yeah, we gotta get to know Natalie.
Well, hands down, Africa, and I can't specifically say which country there, but it's always been on my heart and haven't been able to go there yet.
Yes. Can I throw in a second follow-up question to that? What's one place that you have been that you most want to go back to?
Oh, right now, Brazil.
Ah, nice.
The food, the people, um, the beauty of the surroundings there, the beach, not only the beaches, but actually the mountains, a whole lot more. But really everything. There wasn't one thing that I didn't like.
Brazil is such a big country that it has a lot of variety in different places. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Natalie, as we're just starting our conversation, can you tell us a little bit more about what your role is right now? What does it look like to do what you do with TeachBeyond?
Yeah. So right now I'm the short-term coordinator. So that means I will walk applicants through the process who want to go with TeachBeyond abroad less than 6 months. So that can be student teachers, interns, and then of course our English camps and anything in between that is less than 6 months. Yeah. And I'm trying to find a partner school with TeachBeyond around the world with what the applicant is looking for usually, or sometimes the other way around.
It's such an interesting role, and you get to be able to connect with so many different people. And we want to get to how you got to that role. So we got to go all the way back to your beginnings. Can you talk a little bit about your growing up experience and kind of how you ended up pursuing this career, how you ended up getting into this as you kind of trace your history?
My history. Well, as you guys know, I grew up in Germany, and you can hear that. I still bring that accent with me. And when people usually ask me that question, all I can say from the beginning, as long as I can think of, I always had this longing to go. So in the US, we have the word homesickness. In German, we have the opposite of that word as well. That's called fern-vay. So the longing for the far. And I always had that in my heart. Back then, because I wasn't a Christian growing up in Germany, I did not know that God had placed that in my heart. So I just always knew that I wanted to, I didn't know exactly where. I think I knew pretty early on that I would move to the United States because I never was interested on going on vacation to the US. I always told my friends, "No, I'll live there one day." Yeah, and then I just in high school, I specifically really just went for it and said I want to go either to school or occasionally something that takes as little time as possible to leave Germany as fast as soon as possible. Not because I didn't like Germany, I just because I really felt a calling to go abroad, study languages. Yeah, specifically for as a European secretary. We don't have that here in the US. But it took me just 2 years to get pretty decent in a couple of foreign languages. And then I left for the Canary Islands because Spanish was my last language and I didn't really have a lot of experience speaking. And that's kind of how, yeah, very simple, not really a lot to it.
Can you? I've never heard the term. What you're the secretary?
European secretary. So it's a
Yes.
commercial correspondent in 3 foreign languages, basically. So
Okay.
it was created back then in the 80s, 90s to send admins, executive admins
Huh.
to Brussels, to Europe, to the European Union, to the headquarters there.
So that first step to the Canary Islands, what was the actual role? And then I'd love to have you trace just some of the roles that you've had in applying that particular field of study.
I applied as a representative of a German tour operator. So back then in the 80s, 90s, every big tour operator had their representatives on their main at their main destinations. Like for Germans, it was Mallorca, Ibiza, the Canary Islands, etc. And so they would send young people out of school there and help to receive the tourists that they basically sold a whole package with. And I'd be like, oh yeah, that would be fun, and I can learn Spanish. And I was very, for better lack of word, very full of myself, and just thought like, yeah, of course they want me. I'm just gonna try out an interview. I wasn't very serious, and because the Canary Islands wasn't really something where where a newbie would be sent to. They usually go to Mallorca or Tunisia, where it's really big tourism areas. And yeah, they sent me there. And I just really wanted to learn Spanish. And at the same time, there was a lot of admin. I worked at the airport, receiving people, sending people, excursions, etc. So it wasn't very related to my actual education, but it was for me just a purpose to learn Spanish and become fluent in Spanish and then take it from there. I never had the intention of staying there longer than 6 months. That was just one setting. But I met my husband there, so that was it. That changed everything. I met my husband and completely changed job directions. Became a windsurf instructor for 3-4 years with him. So that's what he was, and we traveled to different locations, and then I switched pretty fast into admin positions wherever I was. I think the Dominican Republic was the first one. I became reservations manager there for a small tour operator. And then once we moved to Aruba, I went to a bigger hotel, became reservations manager there. And that's where everything just really fell into place. And there were a couple in between, just short term positions. And then while we lived on Aruba, our green card got processed. So then we knew within a year we would be able to move to the United States. And then from there, I went into conference planning, actually. I think it's the admin position that has always come naturally, and I really learned that when I went to school for that. But what was for me more important was that I was able to go into different countries and learn the cultures, and I just fell in love with all the different cultures. And back then, especially still as a German, you weren't necessarily well received everywhere.
Mm, mm.
And I just love wherever we lived, if it was just 3 months or if it was a year or 2 or 3, just all the diversity of where the people came from, and including food and the history. I started learning a whole lot more about the history of each place where we lived, and that just instilled a desire and love for me to connect people. And it was very interesting in the small world of hotel business and windsurfing, traveling. You would go, like I would work at Lake Garda and all of a sudden meet a guy that was our client in the Dominican Republic, together
Huh.
with somebody who had worked in Venezuela. And we all knew each other, but from very different
Huh.
places. and
Yeah.
walking there, go like, whoa, what are you doing here? So that just really started the love for that. And then the combination with my administration skill and love for it was just a wonderful combo. Yeah, and in conference planning, that was actually my dream job back then. So that was in 2002 when we moved to the United States. And my boss back then, she hired me purely because I was German and had traveled all over. There was not
Yeah.
really anything else. She just said like, "Oh, I want to have somebody who speaks 2 or 3 languages on my team."
Right.
And
Right.
she taught me everything. She was a really great lady. It was a great
Yeah.
place to do conferences right there in Santa Cruz, California. So you had the Silicon Valley, a lot of big companies coming from all over the country and smaller ones. Back then, smaller ones like PayPal, etc. They were super small and just came for day day teams,
Yeah. Yeah.
day meetings. Yeah. So
Yeah.
and I love that.
So you've had these experiences in all different parts of the world. You are growing in these job skills and growing in your career. You're growing in your marriage. So then tell us how you were first introduced to Jesus and then how your heart started being shaped towards understanding global missions.
My marriage struggled really badly. And that's how I got introduced to Jesus. A very good friend of mine that I always just thought like, what is so different about her? These women are so different, and they were all believers, and it was just beautiful to watch them and their relationship and everything. And my husband and my husband had to work on Aruba a lot and was pulled back there. We had 2 little kids, 1 and 3, so we struggled in our marriage. And then my friend offered to come to, she didn't say a Bible study. It was more like, oh, I have 2 other friends who are struggling in their marriage. Why don't we meet once a week? And I said, oh, wonderful. Yeah, great. This is like counseling. So maybe I can check that off, and then I'm done with my marriage. So, and then right the first time we all met together, through a really wonderful book for women only, I got introduced to Jesus, and that was it. So still
Mm,
married.
mm,
Yeah, and then I became a Christian within 3, 4 months, and those ladies discipled me there. That's where I went first into ministry with Young Life, actually, as a Young Lives leader there. They did a wonderful job with the trainings, and I remember also right away when I became a Christian, I thought, wow, I wasted all these years traveling to these different cultures just because I wanted to be there, and I wasted it and wasn't able to share Jesus. So I remember sitting on my sofa back then, whoa, 15, 16 years ago, and so like, if I ever have a chance again to do anything like this, then I just want to do it for the Lord and to share the gospel with people around the world. So here we are, 15, 16 years later, and I get to do that.
yeah. You know that 15, 16 years, we don't just fast forward through that, right? There are probably some things that changed about your life pretty quickly, and then some things that it was a course of a decade before there was a shift. And I know you continued in the windsurfing and the, water sports and that kind of direction for
Mhm.
a little while. So can you tell us more about how you first entered into a job that was connected to missions?
No, I actually, I became a Christian at a missionary alliance church. So missions was right away there, and my first
Mm,
introduction was with an organization called Remember New that our church supported and helped building. So I went to Thailand, not with the church, but we had missionaries there. A good friend of mine and her family, she served there for a year and a half building an orphanage home, and I went to visit her, stayed with her for a couple of weeks, and yeah, that was a very very important time in my life, because at the same time, so we had our business, and we had struggled very badly with the business, and make a very long story short, after a couple of years, we ended up having to declare bankruptcy. So but we decided that while I was in Thailand, because the organization that we were with was specifically to prevent children to be sold into sex slavery. To say like, no, we have options to the parents, right? And usually it was because the parents were owing, they owed $50 or $100 to somebody, and they had to sell their daughter or their son. So for me, that was very pivotal in our situation. And, my husband and I decided, well, we live in a country where when you become an entrepreneur, you are protected by law that if something goes wrong, that you can declare bankruptcy. And then eventually, you build your life back up together again. And I told my husband, well, we don't have to sell our children. So, it's at the end of the day, really our pride that we just have to hand to the Lord and let him figure out the rest, how this continues. So that was in April of 2013. And then, and from there on, we had to, we sold everything. We sold our house and everything and paid off as much as we could from the business failure there, and moved east to the East Coast to Miami. And then we started new there again. And eventually I started working in global missions with our church at CF Miami. And but also very involved in local missions. Yeah, I became a homeschooling mom, which I never had planned on doing. So it was just a very, very hard time, but also really beautiful, very fruitful, and in ministry. And I just learned so much and was so blessed that I had great people around me who gave me the opportunity to connect what I loved doing while I still was a mom first to my kids.
It's so interesting to hear your desire when you were a kid to your longing for far away, your desire to kind of travel, to go other places, and then that was before you were a Christian. And then when you're a Christian, you still focus kind of on the global, extended beyond just your present location. And so as you think about God working as you're a kid versus as you're an adult, how do you think about the idea of calling? Was this calling kind of in you from birth? Was this only when you were a Christian, all of a sudden seeing how God could use you? How do you think about that?
But I think he put that in my heart, from the beginning. Just when I wasn't a Christian, I didn't know what it was, and how I grew up. It was just, oh yeah, that's gonna be fun. Let's see all the countries, or work in different countries, get good experience, have a great resume with exposure like that. And then that once I became a Christian, didn't matter at all anymore. It was really just the calling of, and he clearly called me not to go anywhere, because my kids were really young. So that was very hard for me. I thought like, oh, this will never happen. I'm here with my kids. I can't go anywhere, and financially, of course. So then, what happened in the next 12 years, slowly but surely, um, now I can sit there and just in awe how he put all that together. He made my husband a flight attendant, so so I can really go wherever I want to, whenever I want to, most of the time. My kids are grown up now and they do their own thing. I just had to be patient and wait a little bit, and how important that was those years. Yeah. So I don't think it has really changed. I just didn't know in my younger years that that was God's calling on my heart.
Let's take a short break for our weekly spotlight.
For our weekly spotlight this week, we are focusing on our short-term and part-time opportunities. As Natalie mentioned, that is a big part of her story. Finding ways to learn from new cultures and using her gifts to volunteer. To find out more, visit teachbeyond.org/short-term or click on the link in the show notes.
Now back to our conversation with Natalie. Natalie, I think it's so interesting to see how these different seasons of life have brought different opportunities that just keep snowballing, right? Like one thing has led to another, even through challenges or unexpected circumstances, or the seasons that are maybe smaller or quieter, if you will, like when you weren't able to travel as much. And so how did you hear about Teach Beyond, and how did that intersect with where you were in that season, and how did you know this is something you wanted to step into?
The first time I heard about Teach Beyond was actually the daughter of a friend of mine from church. She served with Teach Beyond as a teacher, but I didn't know a whole lot about it. Just like, oh, great, she's going over there with Teach Beyond. And then my daughter at college, she had the global missions week at her college, and she went to our booth there, to our table there, and saw that we were looking for a German translator. And at the same time, for a year about already, I've been thinking like, oh, how am I gonna? I need to learn more German in regards to evangelism, or read the German Bible, because it's a whole different language, and I didn't grow up with
Yeah.
that kind of language. And
Yeah.
so when my daughter met Kayla, who was representing us for as TeachBeyond there at the Global Missions Conference, and she's the translation um, coordinator for all the different languages. So Amanda said like, "Oh, mom, look, I saw this here. They are looking for a German translator. I thought it's something for you." So I just got in touch with Kayla, and we started from there. Just a few hours a week helping with translations, and then the more I got to know about Teach Beyond actually through my translations, so I
Mm.
translated the annual report. And that just opened my eyes, and I saw more and more, and I go like, wow, this is an amazing organization. And then I wanted to be part of the orientation, and wanted to become an associate so that I could actually go and be a substitute teacher maybe for a month or two. That's kind of how I had it in my head. Oh, once the girls, when they're both finished, I still had one in high school, then I can see myself doing that. And there we go.
Yeah, that's great. It's so interesting, Natalie, because I think more often we hear that a parent might pass along information to their college age son or daughter of, hey, maybe this is what you want to do. I heard about Teach Beyond. I love that it was the other way around. And
Yeah.
since your daughter has gotten involved with Teach Beyond, but
Yeah.
at the time she thought of you. And I think that's a really interesting dynamic because we sometimes don't necessarily we think going abroad or serving with mission organization might be for a college student or a 20 something,
Yeah.
but it's for all these different seasons of life. And I love that you wanted to find a way to volunteer, and that's actually led into you using your gifts in some really strategic ways, using your past experience coordinating mission trips at a church, and also with conference planning, and now being able to do those now with Teach Beyond. It's really amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can see God's hand clearly on that. That's
Absolutely.
yeah, it's really beautiful to when you just look back, and also even the connections now when I meet people, and it still is a little bit even through our windsurf years back from 20 years ago, and all of a sudden, oh, this connects, especially when I spent some time in Brazil earlier this year. Just yeah, only God can orchestrate all that. So whenever you sit for a couple of years, in the waiting room and think like, oh, nothing will ever happen to me anymore. And all these kids, no. Then
Mm,
God is working in the background, right? And I mean, I have to say, I'm so thankful for my homeschooling years, because that opened my eyes to education as well.
mm,
So, and
mm,
then when I started having interviews with different people from Teach Beyond, and it just became very clear, just the vision and the schools and the teachers, and just from top down, there was nothing where I thought like, whoa, that's weird. It was just, I just was in awe of everything,
mm.
and made me even more wanting to become a teacher again. Maybe one day, I
Ah,
don't know. But
yeah.
no, yeah, it really is. There was nothing. Sometimes it felt like this can't be real. That a whole organization, everybody's so far that I met.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful, and just yeah, exudes the light of Jesus. And I love that, and just that we use education as to spread the word and reach the nation.
I love as you describe kind of your thought process, starting with the annual report, doing languages, and then you're like, maybe I could volunteer, maybe it's in the future, and then maybe I could come on full time. Just kind of the progression and realizing it's right for different seasons in different ways, but then fully involved, full time, kind of working with Teach Beyond. And you even talk about kind of how God's transformed you as you see these different opportunities, and God continues to transform you. So I'm curious, how have you seen God transforming you as you've been able to work more closely with Teach Beyond in your time with Teach Beyond so far?
Even more than ever, just really seeing that God is in control. So I think admins very easily, and as mobilization coaches, we can go of the route of, okay, I need to find a place for them, and I need to find the right person, and I need to make sure this happens as fast as possible. Um, and that we just always need to take a step back, and and started with prayer, and knowing that however fast or slow the process works, that God is in charge, and I cannot take credit for it, and I am not fully responsible for the outcome of it. All I do is try and connect people with each other. And that is, so your burden isn't really heavy. It's just like anything in life, right? If you just leave it at the cross and completely let Jesus take care of it, yeah, it's freedom. And it's not. So I just love that, and I get to work in that every day, and I get that with my colleagues. I see my coworkers out like that. I see from top down my bosses like that, and so yeah, I just get to work in this every single day. I love it.
That's so good, Natalie. I feel the same, that it's a privilege to get to be a part of what the Spirit's doing in people's lives, for sure. Natalie, I'd love to know. I'm thinking about how you mentioned getting to see some of the work in Brazil earlier this year, and just hearing the
Mhm.
stories, even through translating annual reports and being involved in translating other materials. What's a story of how you've seen God at work in Teach Beyond, in his work around the world, that you've had kind of a front row seat to?
So, in regards to front row seat, my husband and I had the chance to visit some of the work of Teach Beyond in Brazil earlier this year. We had planned the trip a little bit. We were there for 4 weeks, so it was the first part. The first 2 weeks was down in the south, specifically with the Teach Beyond informal education guys, and then I moved up to Gramado, where our Teach Beyond Brazil headquarters is, and get to meet a few people there. During the first 2 weeks, they helped me already set up something because they knew I would go up north to Fortaleza and Jericoacoara. So my husband still had connections there from like 20 years ago, where a friend said, "Yeah, come stay with us." And it happened to be so that Teach Beyonder in Fortaleza was in Jericoacoara the same time when we arrived there for a couple of days. So Fortaleza and Jericoacoara are is a 4-hour drive. So he just said like, okay, great, I'll pick you up at the airport, and then I'll get you halfway there, and the rest the hotel guy can do. And so they welcomed us, and just it was amazing. And then learned while there for 45 minutes that his sister has a house there, and that he just loves Jericoacoara, and he would love to start a ministry there eventually, a mentoring ship and all this. I go like, okay, interesting. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe while we are there, we can find out something. So then we got to Jericoacoara, and we went out for dinner a couple of times. And I just noticed that trying to learn more and more English. So my husband's friend's girlfriend happened to be the mayor, the new elected mayor of Jerry. So while we were having dinner, I started to ask them, well, how does it work with your employees? Would you like them to learn more English? And he was like, yeah, it would be great, but they don't have any opportunity here. We don't have English teachers. And so I said like, oh, well, maybe I can help you somehow. And maybe we can connect you, because I know this gentleman that lives in Fortaleza, but he really has a heart for Jerry, and he would, be interested in starting a program.
Mm.
So long story short, we were able to connect these two, and hopefully it will develop that they um, will start a mentorship through English classes. And
Mm,
that's none of my
amazing.
doing, but it's just like, how
Yeah,
can, anybody
yeah,
put that together? Only God can.
that's right. Yeah.
So it was just beautiful, yeah, for my husband to witness that as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I love how the story that you chose to tell is the potential for something, because I think you're so good at seeing what can be, and envisioning and making those connections is part of actually setting the groundwork for, what could be a year from now, a place that you're sending someone to, right? But just trusting that the Lord will grow the things that need to grow, and in his timing, just like he's done in your own life. That the waiting, um anticipating that he'll work, now you can do that as you're seeing that with projects within Teach Beyond and opportunities within Teach Beyond. That's great.
Yeah,
Such a
I love that.
helpful perspective to say, okay, well, the Lord is bigger than this, and He's already at work here, and we trust that He'll, take this and grow it in the way that it needs to. That's
Yeah.
great.
And I think early on, when I got discipled, I had really wonderful ladies who always said, well, somebody's dream can be for somebody else really easy to make it happen. And it's not a dream for them. It's just a very easy connecting. And I think in my life, there were so many moments where I just go like, I just wish I could do this, or I just wish I was there, or how would I get there? I think it's just an honor when you can connect people, and it's not about you, but oh, I know somebody. I have no idea how to do that, but I know somebody else who did. And then you step out again and they do what God is calling them to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Natalie, it's been so interesting to hear your story and hear the journey God has taken you on. I'm curious if you could travel back in time, if you could talk to young Natalie when she's in college and high school, what would you tell her? What kind of encouragement, perspective would you be able to give her that could help in your journey to get here where you are currently?
That sounds very simple, but at the first I would just say it'll be okay. It'll be okay. And not to having to rush or have it to figure it out right away, but rather just go where one door opens. Because if we don't take the first door, we have no idea what comes next, right? So just we don't have to have a 5-year plan. I don't hear, I'm what, 53. I don't even have a 1-year plan. Maybe I have a 1-year plan, but
Yeah, yeah,
I don't. And I know, some people are very, no, but you got to have a 1 year, 2, 4, 5. And I go like, no, I really don't, because I don't know what
yeah,
God is all of a sudden deciding
yeah.
to open up or not. I've learned by now that I cannot, as much as I would love to be a planner, and no, I cannot plan what God has in store for me. So it's okay not to have it all figured out and to really
Mhm.
go with one step at a time.
Natalie, I know you have two daughters who are young adults in their early 20s, and I'm just wondering what advice you give them based on kind of reflecting on what you would have wanted to hear when you were in your young adult life, preparing to move into adulthood.
That's a good question because they're both so different.
Hmm.
I think that's the biggest one. I don't know if one one sentence works for everyone. I mean, right now I'm doing the same. I'm telling my daughters just enjoy this time. They're 20 and 21. Just enjoy not having to have it figured out. Go with where the spirit leads you, and they're blessed to have a home with two parents that are not putting a lot of pressure on them. And I know what I taught them. I homeschooled them, so I know they can work. They're good workers. Take the time and figure it out a little bit. And
Mhm.
especially if you don't know exactly what you want to do, then figure it out by elimination on just doing something.
Yeah.
Figure it out while you go
Mhm.
if you really don't know what your calling is yet.
Mm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, that's
That's
great.
great. Really good. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you so much for joining us. I have one last question before I let you go, before we let you go. And that's something we ask all of our guests. And that's what's one thing that's changing your life right now? So this can be something really big and dramatic, or something small that's still making a difference in your life right now. So I'll go first. So, and then Heather will go just to have a little bit of time to think about it. But what's changing my life, it's a small thing, but it's also very dramatic, is just better internet. So this day and age, I'm on the internet for my work, for all the different calls and meetings and things. And it always used to cut out, get a little shaky every now and then, and called the internet provider, and they were able to upgrade some of the systems. And so I have better internet, which is wonderful. So that's
That's
changing my life.
great. Yes, that is great. It's funny, we have a theme going here, Kian, unintentionally, but you both know I have been experiencing a power outage over the past few days. And what was changing my life is that a friend let me stay at her house during that, with where she did have power, and it was just such a gift. So that was changing my life, even as the power outage was changing my life. So thankfully it's back too. So that's great. What about you, Natalie? What's changing your life?
Um, the biggest I can think of right now is because my children are fairly independent right now, and I can work independently when and wherever I'm able to come along with my husband on work trips much easier and faster on the spur, and that changes everything because he's gone a lot, and now I can come with him every now and then.
Yeah, that's great. And one of the pros of some flexible work that you're able to
Yes,
spend more time with him, which is great.
yes.
Well, thank you so much, Natalie, for sharing your story, for helping us to see how God's been at work throughout this, all the different seasons of your life. And thank you for your work now with Teach Beyond short-term programs.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me again.
I loved hearing Natalie's story and the journey that she went on. It isn't too often that we get to hear the journey from windsurfing all the way to mobilization. Maybe we need to add that to our inquiry form.
Yeah, that's very true. We do not often hear that, but I love seeing that progression, how she's used her gifts in different ways in different seasons.
Just one quick reminder for our listeners, if you haven't yet, we'd love for you to fill out our Season 5 survey. We want to hear from you to find out what episodes you like, what you'd like to hear more of in the future, and maybe even what's changing your life. Click on the link in the show notes.
Natalie, Kian, and I serve with an organization called TeachBeyond. Education plays a big role in missions, and TeachBeyond is a part of that.
As followers of Jesus, TeachBeyond is a global community, providing transformational education services as part of God's ongoing mission to transform individuals and communities into all He intends.
Want to learn more and get involved? Visit teachbeyond.org or follow us on social media.
To help more people find the podcast and hear about TeachBeyond, we'd love it if you would leave a rating or review and share this show with a friend. Be sure you're subscribed or following the show on the platform where you listen so you never miss an episode.
And as always, you can reach us at podcast@teachbeyond.org. We'll see you next week for our season finale.